Humans saved an alien girl from the ruined outpost. Her apology later meant more than survival. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. The wind crawled across the ruined outpost like a living thing, brushing dust over broken panels and twisted beams that still smelled faintly of burned circuitry. Evan Carter stepped across the rubble with careful, measured breaths, the dim glow of his wrist beacon painting the wreckage in pale blue. The cold hit first, sharp, dry, the kind that stung his cheeks and made his eyelids tighten against the grit blowing in from the barren flats. He lifted his arm to shield his face, scanning for the faint distress signal that had pulled him miles off his assigned route. It flickered again, barely a pulse, almost shy beneath the static. Still there, he murmured, not raising his voice. The outpost felt like a place where echoes didn't want to disturb the dead quiet. His boots shifted on loose gravel, metal crunching softly underneath. Something about the silence made his heart thud a little harder. He wasn't trained for combat, not anymore, just a mechanic for the Civil Response Corps, but the instinct to help always found its way back into his bones. A half-collapsed support beam pointed toward a narrow gap where the signal seemed strongest, and Evan crouched, pushing debris aside with his gloved hands. Cold metal pressed against his palm, and the faint pulse quickened. He leaned in closer. A sliver of turquoise light, soft, trembling, glimmered beneath a warped console. Evan froze for a breath. Not just equipment. Someone. He slid his fingers under the edge, lifting as much as he dared. The panel shifted, sighing against the ground, revealing the curled form of a young alien girl, her skin a muted turquoise with a faint silver sheen where the beacon light touched it. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. She wasn't hurt in any way that he could see, just exhausted, cold, and terrified. Her eyes cracked, open, shimmering like frost-touched glass, watching him without moving. Evan exhaled slowly, letting his voice stay low and calm. Hey, you're okay. I've got you. Her small hands twitched, not in fear, more like she wasn't sure she was allowed to reach back. The outpost creaked above them, a warning groan that dusted his shoulders with loose grit. No time to think. He eased the panel farther aside and gently lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her skin faintly warm despite the cold air pressing in. She didn't speak, just watched him with wide, uncertain eyes as he stepped out into the fading light. The wind pulled at his jacket, tugging strands of her silver-blue hair across his shoulder. Evan tightened his hold, not forceful, just certain. You're safe now, he whispered, more to reassure her than himself. And with the outpost fading behind them, he headed toward the long stretch of desert where the rescue rover waited, its beacon blinking softly like a promise in the dark. The rescue rover waited at the far edge of the flats, its cabin light glowing like a quiet heartbeat in the cold dusk. Evan Carter adjusted his grip on the alien girl as he walked, careful not to jostle her, careful not to let the rising wind sting her face. She kept her eyes on him, unblinking, as if trying to understand how a stranger had appeared out of ruin and dust to carry her away. Her silver-blue hair brushed against his collar every time he shifted his stride. When he reached the rover, its sensors chimed softly, recognizing his badge. The door slid open with a warm breath of filtered air. He stepped inside and set her gently on the padded bench, watching her shoulders tense as the cabin sealed behind them. The sudden quiet made her flinch, as if silence itself was unfamiliar. Evan crouched, so his gaze met hers. You are safe, he said softly. She blinked, her turquoise skin catching the cabin glow like polished stone. What is your name? For a moment she hesitated, her hands curling against the bench as though holding onto something invisible. Leary, she whispered. The word was soft, shaped by an accent he did not recognize. Leary Thalen. Evan nodded. I am Evan. I will get you to the station. They will know what to do. She studied him, not with distrust, but with something quieter, like she was measuring the distance between gratitude and fear. You carried me, she said, almost confused, even when I did not speak. Evan stood and secured the rover's harness around her before answering. You sent a distress signal. That was enough. The rover hummed to life, engines warming beneath the floorboards. Outside, the twilight deepened, painting the flats in muted reds and purples. Leary watched the landscape shift through the window, her breath leaving faint fog on the glass. My people teach caution, she murmured. We are told that humans do not intervene unless it benefits them. Evan glanced at her, his hands steady on the controls. Maybe some do, but not all. Her eyes drifted back to him, lingering with an expression he could not quite read. The rover bumped gently over a ridge, and she steadied herself on the seat. Your hands were shaking, she said. Was it the cold? Evan almost smiled. Maybe. Or maybe I was worried the outpost would collapse before I got you out. Leary tilted her head, a small crease forming between her brows. You worried for someone you did not know. It happens, Evan replied. The cabin warmed quickly, and he handed her a foil-wrapped heat pack. She held it gingerly at first, then relaxed when the warmth spread across her palms. Her shoulders lowered, tension melting little by little. A soft chime blinked on the console as the station's coordinates locked in. Still, Leary kept her eyes on him, her voice barely above a breath. Evan, why did you come alone? Most would wait for backup. He hesitated only a moment. I heard the signal. I was the closest. And I did not want you to be afraid any longer than you already were. Leary looked down at the heat pack, clasping it between her hands. When she spoke, her voice carried a faint tremor. No one has said something like that to me before. The rover continued across the open plain, its engine a soft reminder that they were moving towards safety. But inside the cabin, the quiet between them grew warm, gentle, and unexpectedly human. The station came into view as a cluster of soft amber lights rising from the flat horizon, its landing pads blinking in steady rhythm like a calm hand guiding them home. Inside the rover cabin, the gentle hum of the engines filled the quiet, wrapping Evan and Leary in a kind of stillness that felt fragile, almost delicate. Leary kept her gaze fixed on the approaching lights, but every few seconds her eyes drifted back to Evan, studying the way his hands rested on the controls, steady and warm despite the long trek through the cold. When the rover crossed the security threshold, a soft chime sounded and the overhead panels glowed a welcoming gold. Leary shifted, fingers brushing the heat pack she still held between her palms. Is this where you live? She asked, her voice barely louder than the hum of the cabin. Evan shook his head. I work here sometimes. It is not home, but it is safe. She nodded, absorbing the word as though it was something rare. Safe. The rover eased into the docking lane, slowing to a gentle stop. Evan powered down the systems and unlatched his harness, turning toward her. How are you feeling? Her eyes flickered, thoughtful, warm, and tired. She hesitated, and less afraid. Evan offered his hand to help her stand. She accepted it, her turquoise skin cool against his palm. When she stood, her legs wobbled slightly. He steadied her with a careful touch, the kind that did not assume but offered. She looked up at him, searching his face. You do not treat me like I am fragile, she said. But you also do not treat me like I am dangerous. Evan let out a soft breath. I am just treating you like a person. That made her blink, as if the sentence carried a weight she had not expected. The rover doors opened with a low hiss, letting in the warm, artificial air of the station. A few technicians glanced their way, curious but respectful, giving the pair space. Leary stepped out slowly, her silver-blue hair shimmering under the corridor lights. She stayed close to Evan, her shoulder almost brushing his arm as they walked. Is it always this quiet? She asked. Only at this hour, Evan replied. Most crews are off shift. You will get checked by medical, just to make sure you are all right. I am not injured, Leary said, but her voice carried a hint of uncertainty, like she was unsure whether she should trust her own assessment. They just want to help, Evan reassured. No scans without your permission, no questions you do not want to answer. She looked at him again, more openly this time. You keep giving me choices. Evan offered a small smile. Choices matter. They reached the lift. Leary stepped inside, her eyes widening slightly as the doors closed with a soft glow. The lift hummed upward, smooth and silent. She leaned lightly against the rail, watching the floor numbers rise. Evan, she said quietly. He turned his head. Yes. Back at the outpost. I thought no one would come. Her voice wavered, like a breath catching on something she had carried too long. When I saw you, I did not believe you were real. Evan felt something tighten gently in his chest. I am real, he said softly, and I am glad I got there in time. Her eyes shone in the lift's gentle light, reflecting something new, something warm. So am I, she whispered, the words almost trembling as they left her lips. The lift doors opened, and the soft glow of the medical bay spilled out like morning light waiting for both of them. The medical bay glowed with a soft white light that felt warmer than it looked, like the room itself was trying to be gentle. Evan slowed his pace so Leary could take it in at her own rhythm. She stepped forward cautiously, her turquoise skin catching the glow in shifting hues, almost like the light was learning her shape. A medical attendant approached, a woman in her 50s with calm eyes and a badge that read Dr. Marin. She offered a reassuring smile. You must be Leary. We have a room ready for you. No procedures unless you approve. Just to check to make sure you are comfortable after the Outpost incident. Leary's fingers curled at her sides, but her posture held steady. I understand. Evan watched her carefully, ready to step in if she needed him, but she gave him a small glance, a silent message that she was managing. Dr. Marin led them into a small examination room. Soft panels illuminated the walls, and a cushioned seat awaited Leary beside a compact diagnostic scanner. Evan stood near the doorway, out of the way but close enough for her to see him without turning her head. Leary sat down with quiet grace. The scanner pulsed once, releasing a gentle wave of warm air that brushed her hair. This will just read surface temperature and hydration, the doctor explained. No intrusion. Leary nodded, her eyes flicking back to Evan as the scanner chimed. He offered an encouraging smile. Her shoulders loosened. You are mildly dehydrated, Dr. Marin said. We can fix that easily. She handed Leary a warm bottle of mineral solution. Leary held it delicately, tasting a small sip before giving a single approving nod. You reacted well to the cold, the doctor added, but you should rest. Your system is still stressed. Leary lowered the bottle. Rest sounds good. The doctor stepped away to finalize the report. Evan moved closer, leaning lightly against the wall. You handled that better than most people would after a day like yours. Leary looked at him with a tired softness. I trusted your words, she said. That made everything easier. Evan felt the warmth of the room settle deeper into his chest. I meant what I said. Her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful, almost studying the way he carried himself. Your world is different from mine, she said quietly. Most kindness shown to me has been measured. Conditional. Not here, Evan replied. Not with me. She seemed to breathe that in, as if testing the truth of it with each second she held his eyes. Dr. Marin returned with a small blanket. We have a recovery room prepared. She needs rest for at least a few hours. Leary accepted the blanket, running her fingers over the fabric. Thank you, she said softly. Evan walked beside her as they exited the exam room and followed the short corridor. The recovery room was simple but warm, with a wide reclining chair and a soft overhead glow that mimicked early morning light. Leary stepped inside, inhaling slowly, the tension in her frame easing as though the air itself was gentler here. Evan paused in the doorway. I can stay until you fall asleep, he offered quietly. Her eyes softened, something fragile settling behind them. I would like that, she whispered. Evan took a seat beside the recliner. Leary settled under the blanket, her breathing growing slow and even. She looked at him one last time, her voice a faint thread of sound. You came for me when no one else did. Evan sat still, letting the moment speak for itself. And as her eyes drifted closed, the room felt warmer than it had before, as if her trust had changed the air around them. The recovery room settled into a quiet that felt almost tender, like the walls understood how much the girl resting beneath the blanket needed the silence. Evan stayed in the chair beside her, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing as the artificial morning light warmed the edges of the room. Leary slept deeply at first, her silver blue hair falling across her cheek in feathered strands. Every so often she shifted, not in distress, but in the way someone moves when safety finally catches up to them. After nearly an hour, she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the soft glow overhead. She found Evan immediately, as if her mind reached for him before her eyes fully focused. You stayed, she whispered, her voice colored by sleep. Evan nodded. I said I would. She looked down at the blanket, smoothing a wrinkle with her fingertips. I do not think I have ever fallen asleep knowing someone else would be there when I woke. Evan felt the weight of that without needing her to explain more. You can relax here, he said gently. No one will rush you. Leary sat up a little, drawing the blanket around her shoulders. Her turquoise skin caught the warm light, softening into a pale glow. Your station is very still, she said. My home is always loud, always moving. Evan smiled lightly. You get used to it. Stillness can be good. She considered that for a long moment, her gaze drifting to the window panel that looked out into the hallway. When I was at the outpost, she said quietly, I tried to keep my mind calm. I kept imagining someone finding me. But every time I pictured it, the face kept changing. Her fingers twisted the blanket's edge. It never felt real. Evan leaned forward slightly, making sure his tone stayed soft. And when it was real? Leary's breath caught. When it was real, it felt impossible. She glanced at him then, something bright and uncertain filling her eyes. How did you find me? The signal was very weak. Weak? Evan agreed, but not gone. I just followed it. She looked at him more fully now, studying the quiet honesty in his face. Most people would not follow a faint signal into a collapsing outpost, she said. Most would. Decide it was too risky. Maybe, Evan replied. But you were there. That was enough for me. The words settled between them like warm air. Leary drew the blanket closer, the gesture small but meaningful. There is something strange, she said in a thoughtful whisper. When I woke in the rover, I felt embarrassed. Evan blinked. Embarrassed. She nodded. I could not understand why a human, a stranger, would care so much. I thought maybe I did something wrong. You did nothing wrong, Evan said softly. I just did what anyone should do. Leary tilted her head at that, as if trying to map the logic of his statement against everything she had been taught. Your world is confusing, she murmured. Evan chuckled under his breath. You will get used to it. She looked around the room, then back at him, her eyes a little warmer than before. May I walk for a moment? She asked. I want to feel the station air. Of course, Evan said, standing. She rose carefully, and he steadied her without assuming she needed help. They stepped into the hallway. The lights dimmer here, the quiet deeper. Leary walked slowly, her bare feet whispering against the smooth floor. Evan stayed a pace beside her. After a few steps, she spoke again, her voice almost shy. I feel lighter. Not just from rest. From knowing someone looked for me, even when I could not look for myself. Evan felt her words settle somewhere deep inside him. You are not alone now, he said simply. Leary turned her head, her eyes reflecting the soft hallway light. I am starting to believe that, she whispered, and for the first time since he met her, her smile reached her eyes. The hallway curved gently, guiding Evan and Leary toward a quieter wing of the station where the lights dimmed to a warm dusk-like glow. Leary walked beside him, her steps slow but steady, her silver-blue hair brushing lightly against her shoulders as she moved. The air here felt softer, touched by the hum of distant ventilation systems that created a constant, calming backdrop. Leary paused near a viewing panel set into the wall. Through it, she could see the outer dunes where the wind carried thin strands of dust across the flat expanse. She rested her palm against the glass, her turquoise skin reflecting back at her in faint ripples of light. When I was younger, she said softly, I imagined other worlds would feel overwhelming. Too bright, too loud. She turned her head slightly toward Evan. But this place is quiet in a way I did not expect. Evan folded his arms loosely, leaning one shoulder against the wall. This station was built to stay calm during storms. Most people here like the quiet. It helps us think. Leary watched the dunes for another long moment. Calm is good, she murmured. I have lived many days without it. Evan looked at her profile, the soft glow outlining her cheek and the calmness settling into her expression. Are you feeling any better? He asked gently. She nodded. Yes, but I still wonder about something. She turned fully toward him now, her eyes steady and brighter than they had been earlier. You risked yourself for me. You carried me through a collapsing structure. You stayed until I woke. Her voice carried a delicate confusion. Where I come from, such efforts are given in exchange for a duty owed. Evan shook his head slowly. I did not help you because of a duty. I did it because you needed someone. Leary's brows lowered slightly. That does not exist where I am from. Every action has a price. Not here, Evan said. Not for this. She studied him carefully, as if trying to measure the truth in his tone. Then why do your people give kindness without asking for balance in return? Evan took a quiet breath. Because sometimes it is the only thing that keeps the universe from being colder than it already is. Leary absorbed that, her eyes softening with a flicker of something like wonder. She stepped a little closer, the space between them narrowing in a natural, gentle way. Is that why you followed my signal? Even when it was so faint? He nodded. I heard someone calling for help. That was enough. Her expression shifted, something fragile surfacing behind her calm. It feels unusual, she said, to be seen without having to earn it. Evan offered a small smile. You do not have to earn being treated with care. Leary let out a slow breath, almost as if she had been holding it since the moment she woke in the rover. She looked down at her hands, turning them slightly in the soft light. When I first saw you in the outpost, she admitted, I thought you were a vision. Something my mind created because it was tired and alone. I was very real, Evan said gently. She lifted her eyes to his. I know that now, but I did not then. And when I realized you were real, I felt something I did not know how to name. Evan waited, letting her take her time. Relief, she whispered. I felt relief that you existed. Her voice lingered in the air, quiet and honest. Evan's chest warmed at the sincerity of her words. I am glad I existed in that moment too, he said with a soft warmth that matched hers. Leary looked back toward the dunes, but this time her reflection in the glass looked different, lighter, steadier, as if the world around her finally made a kind of sense she could accept. Evan, she said after a moment, I want to understand your kind better. He smiled. I can help with that. She leaned her forehead gently against the glass, her voice a soft breath. I think you already are. The soft glow from the viewing panel dimmed as the station's automatic cycle shifted toward night mode, bathing the hallway in a deeper, amber warmth. Evan and Leary stood close to the glass, the dunes outside fading into smooth shadows under the settling sky. Leary breathed in slowly, her breath barely stirring the quiet around them. Something in her posture shifted, a faint tightening of her shoulders that made Evan glance at her with concern. Are you tired? He asked gently. She shook her head. Not tired. Just thinking. She stepped back from the panel, brushing a strand of silver-blue hair behind her ear. Evan, there is something I have not told you. Her voice carried the kind of hesitation that made him straighten instinctively. You do not have to tell me anything that feels heavy, he said softly. Not yet. She looked up at him with eyes that seemed brighter in the low light. But I want to, she said. She took a small step toward him, lifting her chin slightly. When I fled the outpost, I was not running from an enemy. I was running from my own patrol. They wanted to relocate me because I questioned an assignment. They thought my hesitation was disloyal. Her hands clasped together, fingertips pressing lightly. Where I come from, questioning an order is not allowed. Ever. Evan kept still, letting her shape the moment. I knew an outpost nearby might offer shelter, but when the storm hit, everything collapsed around me. My signal was not meant for my people. It was meant for anyone. She paused, her voice turning fragile. I did not expect that anyone would come. Evan's heart tightened at the honesty woven into her words. But I did, he said quietly. Leary nodded, a slow, grateful motion. Yes, you did. She took another breath, deeper this time, as if preparing herself for something heavier. There is more, she added. When my patrol realizes I am missing, they will come here. They will see that I asked for help outside the chain of command. They will say I abandoned protocol. Her voice softened to almost a whisper. They may demand that I return with them immediately. Evan felt a subtle shift inside him, a protective instinct settling into place. Do you want to go back? Leary looked down at her hands again, her turquoise skin glowing faintly under the amber lighting. I want to go back someday, she admitted. But not like this. Not afraid. Not alone. Evan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Then you will not go back alone. She lifted her gaze, her eyes searching his. You mean that? I do, he said. You are not a prisoner here. You are a guest, and you can stay as long as you need. For a moment, she simply looked at him, her expression softening in a way that felt almost vulnerable. Evan, she whispered, when you carried me from the rubble, I felt something I did not have a name for. I think I understand it now. He waited, breath held without realizing it. It was trust, she said. I trusted you before I even understood why. The hallway hum softened, almost disappearing, leaving only the quiet between them. Leary stepped close enough that her voice became a gentle warmth in the air. And I still do. The hallway seemed to hold its breath after Leary whispered her trust, as if the station itself understood the weight of the moment. The amber lights glowed warmer, soft shadows drifting along the smooth walls. Evan felt the air shift between them, not with tension, but with a quiet truth neither of them needed to name out loud. Leary stepped back just enough to look at him fully, her silver-blue hair catching faint glimmers of light with each small movement. There is something else I must tell you, she said softly. It is not dangerous, but it is important. Evan nodded, giving her the silence she needed. She drew in a slow breath, her turquoise skin warming at the edges as if emotions traveled through the color itself. My name, Leary Phelan, she paused, as though waiting to see how he would react to what she had not yet said. It is not a common name among my people. Evan tilted his head slightly. Meaning? Leary's eyes lowered, her voice quieter. My family holds a respected position. My mother oversees the trade routes for our entire region. My father negotiates treaties. I was expected to follow in their steps. She lifted her gaze, a gentle vulnerability shining through. But I questioned orders. I asked why. That is why they wanted to relocate me. They believed I needed correction. Evan felt the truth settle, gentle but heavy. So you were not just running from danger, he said. You were running from expectations. Leary nodded. Yes, and from becoming someone I did not want to be. She turned toward the viewing panel again, watching the dunes beyond the glass dissolve into the night. Among my people, apologies are rare. They carry great meaning because they admit imperfection. She pressed her palm softly to the glass. And I have never given one before. Evan stepped closer, not touching her, just offering his presence. You do not owe me anything, he said quietly. Not an apology, not a story, nothing. Her reflection in the glass softened, her eyes shimmering with a fragile warmth. But I do owe you something, she whispered. Not because you demand it, but because my heart demands it. Evan felt something tighten gently in his chest. Leary. She turned toward him then, fully, her expression open in a way he had not seen before. When you found me in the outpost, I was convinced I had made a mistake. I believed my choice to flee would end with me being forgotten or lost. Her voice trembled softly, but her gaze held steady. But you changed that. She took a breath that shook just slightly at the end. Evan Carter, I am sorry. The words carried a weight far beyond their simplicity. Sorry for doubting you. Sorry for thinking you would leave me. Sorry for thinking your kindness could not be real. Evan swallowed gently, the sincerity of her voice reaching deeper than he expected. You never needed to apologize, he said. But I hear you. She nodded, relief flickering across her face like the soft glow of the station lights. I wanted you to hear it, because it means more to me than survival. Her eyes softened further, a quiet gratitude settling in. You showed me a kind of strength that does not command, a kind of bravery that does not boast, a kind of humanity that does not ask to be honored. Evan felt warmth rise through him, steady and grounding. Leary stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. And because of that, I finally understand something. She looked up at him, her expression calm and honest. You did not save my life. You restored something inside it. The hallway hummed gently around them, as if acknowledging the truth she had finally spoken. The station lights dimmed further as night mode settled fully in, wrapping the corridor in a gentle amber hush. The quiet seemed to expand around Evan and Leary, leaving only the soft hum of distant machinery and the steady rhythm of their breathing. Leary stood close to him, her turquoise skin glowing faintly under the warm light, her silver-blue hair shifting like soft threads of starlight every time she moved. She looked calmer now, grounded, as if speaking her truth had lifted something heavy from her shoulders. Evan watched her with steady eyes, giving her space even as he stayed near enough that she could feel his presence. The silence stretched, not empty, but full of unspoken meaning. Leary's gaze drifted back toward the viewing panel, where the dunes outside had vanished into a velvet darkness broken only by distant glimmers of starlight. She stepped closer to the glass, her reflection blending with the faint shimmer of the night beyond. Evan joined her, standing beside her without touching, letting the closeness speak for itself. Leary lowered her voice, more fragile now that the moment was quiet again. "Evan," she said, "when I apologized, it was not just for the doubts." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "It was for the fear that made me believe kindness was a trick, that compassion was temporary, that safety was a story someone else was allowed to have, but not me." Evan turned slightly, watching the way her hands rested against the smooth panel, fingers relaxed for the first time since he found her. "You do not have to fear that here," he said softly. "Not with me." Leary closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the words settle into her. When she opened them again, they were softer, warmed by a quiet certainty. "I believe you," she whispered. She shifted her stance, her shoulder brushing his lightly, a small gesture but one filled with intent. "And that scares me less than I thought it would." Evan let out a slow breath, the warmth of her trust sinking into him. Outside the panel, a thin streak of light glided across the sky, a distant satellite catching the moon's glow. Leary watched it with a soft expression. "In my culture," she began, "seeing a moving light across the night sky means a path is changing. It signifies that your life is turning towards something unexpected." Evan smiled quietly. "Do you think that is true for you?" Leary nodded once, her voice barely above a breath. "Yes, because I did not expect you." She turned to face him fully now, her eyes reflecting the soft ambient glow of the hallway. "I never imagined my life would cross paths with someone who would carry me through the dark without asking why. Someone who would listen without judgment. Someone who would stand beside me even when my own people would not." Her words carried a gentle tremble, not from fear, but from emotion she had not voiced before. "You showed me humanity when I thought none existed." Evan's chest tightened with something warm and steady. "And you showed me trust," he replied. "Trust is rarer than anything else out there." Leary took a step closer, her presence warm, her voice softer than the hum of the station. "I am glad the signal reached you, even if it was weak." "It was enough," Evan said. "You were enough." Leary's eyes glistened, not with tears, but with the quiet weight of understanding. She lifted her hand slowly, hesitating only for a heartbeat before resting her palm over his. The contact was light, gentle, full of meaning. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They did not need to. The station hummed softly around them, the dunes outside resting under a blanket of night, and the faint glow of the stars reflected in Leary's eyes. In that stillness, in that warm pocket of quiet, something unspoken settled between them, clear and certain. She had been saved, but in her own way, she had saved something in him too. And as they stood together in the amber-lit corridor, the universe felt just a little less cold.